Hi everyone! Today we'll be talking about one of my favorite bands, as you may be able to tell by the shirt. We're talking Nirvana. Now I've had the pleasure of spending the last 2 weeks listening to their discography to come up with the cream of the crop. I'm calling this, undeniably, the top 10 best Nirvana songs. And to stir things up a little bit, I'll have my pick for an overrated song at the end. But in the meantime, let's get to the top 10. The last song Nirvana ever recorded would take a long, winding road to being released. In January 1994, prior to leaving to Europe on what would end up being their final tour, Kurt Cobain wanted to demo some new songs. So the trio booked 3 days at a studio in Seattle. However, Kurt didn't show up at all the first 2 days, leaving bassist Chris Novoselic and drummer Dave Grohl to jam on their own songs. When Cobain finally showed up on the final day, he didn't have any equipment and had to use gear around the studio. His newest tune, You Know You're Right, was fleshed out and recorded very quickly, no doubt enhancing its turbulent passion. After Kurt's death, the song would become sought after on audio bootlegs from the single time Nirvana played it live. The masters were kept in Novoselic's basement until the 2 remaining members decided to work on releasing a box set to commemorate Nevermind's 10th anniversary. Cobain's widow, Courtney Love, would end up stopping the box set, holding out for the song to be released on a single CD. After a bitter lawsuit between both parties, she would pretty much get her wish, and You Know You're Right would be released in 2002 on the eponymous standalone Greatest Hits CD. For a lost song, You Know You're Right is as vital as their very best material. Inspired by the tempestuous relationship between Kurt and Courtney, the song smolders, with the verses quiet but eerily tense as Cobain berates himself over sparse light guitar and a constantly rolling bass. On the pre-chorus, Kurt hits the distortion pedal, and the band cranks the fervor to 11, with Cobain growling the title over shrieking guitar. You Know You're Right was an incredible encore from a songwriting savant who burnt out so quickly. When Kathleen Hanna, the leader of the riot girl group Bikini Kill, spray-painted Kurt Smells Like Teen Spirit on the wall of Cobain's bedroom after a wild night of partying, you can't imagine she knew it would inspire a genuine movement. It was meant as an in-joke. Kurt had gone out with her bandmate Toby Vale, and she used the Teen Spirit brand deodorant. Cobain interpreted the message to mean he possessed a youthful, rebellious force. He would use the graffiti as inspiration for a song that would catapult them from obscurity into the mainstream. Cobain would say he was trying to write the ultimate pop song, and had the Pixies, specifically their stellar album Surfer Rosa, in mind. The tune certainly borrows their dynamic sound, soft controlled verses contrasting with a loud, heavy chorus, but the trio also instill a fearless punk rock energy straight from the underground. They would be labeled grunge, but it wasn't the simple, sludgy Seattle variety. Nirvana's rock and roll fury became a phenomenon because no one could match their intensity. Smells Like Teen Spirit is the only song on Nevermind credited to all 3 members. Kurt brought the song in, but it would be Chris who decided to slow down the tempo. This would in turn inspire Dave to create a groove he would later say was based off the disco group The Gap Band. Kurt's wobbly tremolo guitar lingers on the verses as he mumbles over a thumping drum beat and driving bass. When the chorus hits, it sounds like the mosh pit exploding, with thrashing beats and riling distorted guitars, and Kurt's voice straining as if he's using primal scream therapy. He yells, like his potent bile is pointed at the powers that be, telling them to get with the program or get the hell out of the way. Smells Like Teen Spirit is a Molotov cocktail-throwing anarchist anthem that still speaks volumes for legions of disaffected souls raging against the status quo. Love you so much, it makes me sick. With all due respect to Chad Channing, it was when Dave Grohl joined Nirvana that they went from an interesting band to a legendary one. In a trio, every member has to really bring their A game, and Grohl would elevate the band with his staggeringly powerful drumming. The first recordings he joined the band on were a 7-song session in 1991 that were recorded by the band's engineer, Craig Montgomery. This is when Aneurysm was initially captured in 1 take. When they later signed with the major label DGC, it would be tacked onto the Smells Like Teen Spirit single, along with another killer track from those sessions, Even in His Youth. The group would record another version of Aneurysm in London for a BBC program, The Evening Sessions. This take would end up on the Rarities compilation Incesticide, released for the 1992 holidays after the label was disappointed In Utero was not yet ready to stuff stockings. As the first version of Aneurysm was recorded in a single take, it's definitely more raw than the Incesticide version, which features more layers of production, particularly on the background vocals. However, both versions are still intensely visceral. Cobain's gnarled riffs and Grohl's 2-ton tom hits light the powder keg's fuse, moshing with wild abandon. On the verse, Kurt sings like it's demented 50s doo-wop, commanding to come on over to the best, as it wavers between quiet and loud. By the chorus, the guitar thunders as Kurt growls, as if it gives him a sadomasochistic thrill, and with the punishing rhythm, it's like we're all voyeurs to the depravity. Both mightily heavy and undeniably catchy, Aneurysm is an incredible example of how at Nirvana's best, they had this sweet and sour interplay that's too tasty not to want a second serving. While Nirvana really blew up with aggressive attitude, Kurt would later admit he wished he balanced the earlier records with lighter, more melodic material. The most remarkable thing about the band's MTV Unplugged sessions is that Turning Down doesn't rob the songs of any intensity. By focusing more on Cobain's expressive voice, it highlights his thoughtful, introspective lyrics and well-crafted melodies. The Unplugged program was a true revelation because they really showed that under all the angst, Kurt was an exceptional songwriter and performer. Dumb is a mellow ballad, recorded for In Utero. With producer Steve Albini on board, he would push the group to sharpen their already potent sound. Kurt would say the song was about dim-witted people who are easily content with their do-nothing crappy lives, all too happy to binge hours upon hours of TV. Cobain is low-key envious of their simple existence. He sings, I'm not like them, I can pretend, while he strums ringing, clean guitar chords. Chris plays a rolling low end, with Dave's tasteful, jazz-inflected drumming. On the neo-psychedelic chorus, Albini's Chicago area friend, Tara Shaley, plays a deep, melancholy cello line, as Kurt daydreams, the gravity swirls around the stereo spectrum. The arrangement is simple, yet fully three-dimensional, with a beautifully restrained tension that smolders, almost asking for an impassioned release that never comes. Finished in a little over 2 minutes, Dumb is a calming, concise earworm with a delicate, soothing grace. Come as you are, as you were. When rumors were flying that their independent label Sub Pop was having financial issues and may have been looking for a corporate sugar daddy, Nirvana chose to bypass this drama and sign directly with a major. The band shopped around the demos they had just recorded with Grohl, and shortly after, several labels came calling. They would sign with DGC Records, based off a recommendation by Kim Gordon, the bassist from noise rock heroes Sonic Youth. The group's management didn't believe Smells Like Teen Spirit would break the band, and thought it was more for the diehards. Prior to its blow-up, they planned Come As You Are as the trio's big crossover. They had to talk Kurt into releasing it as a single, though. Cobain had noted that the guitar line was too close to the song 80s by British post-punkers Killing Joke. Sure enough, when it was released, Killing Joke took umbrage and called them on it, and there are conflicting reports of whether a lawsuit was ever filed. While the guitar riff is indeed similar, just a tad slower, Come As You Are still stands on its own as a stoned-out, rambling rocker. Kurt's love of a small clone chorus pedal makes his guitar sound waterlogged, as if he threw the amp in the pool. Grohl plays a steady, certain shuffle, and Chris's bass line doubles the main guitar line, deepening the murky layers of the mix. The trippy echoes that wash over the arrangement complement Cobain's compassionate but often contradictory lyrics. He encourages the faithful to take your time, hurry up, yours is yours, don't be late. Yet the warped language sounds logical when paired with the off-kilter rhythm, like a cryptic secret code for loners to join the revolution. Come As You Are is a grungy, rough-around-the-edges, alternative rock anthem of acceptance for all of society's misfits. Nirvana's debut single would be their cover of Love Buzz by the 60s Dutch rock group Shocking Blue. Following its release on Seattle indie label Sub Pop, they would immediately get to work recording their full length. The trio would rehearse a little over 2 weeks to prepare for the sessions and bash out the album in 30 hours, with the bill for the studio time only being $600. The group didn't even have that meager amount though, and would be loaned it by Jason Everman, who would briefly become the band's second guitarist, probably because of that favor. Bleach would be their only album recorded with drummer Chad Channing. Kurt had played the guys a new song without a title. Channing asked him what the song was about, and Cobain coyly responded, "It's about a girl." The specific girl was Kurt's girlfriend at the time, Tracy Marander. She had asked why he had never written a song about her, and so he did. She wouldn't even know that fact until years later when she read about it in a magazine. Cobain wrote About a Girl after spending the night before listening to the Beatles' US debut album, Meet the Beatles, over and over again, which definitely explains why it evokes a lost Lennon-McCartney track. Channing plays a simple Ringo rhythm, along with a confident bass line from Chris. Kurt's jangly electric strums rustle along as he sings the minor key ballad Slightly Straining to add a little bite to its lovely melody. On the chorus, he lays out their antagonistic affair. It's clear that they have their problems, but they're trying to make the fractured relationship work, with the lyrics sung with honest affection over the upbeat bedroom pop. About a Girl is beautifully lo-fi bubblegum pop with a bitter edge. DGC would suggest several big names to produce the album. However, Nirvana held out to work with Butch Vig, who they had been demoing songs with a year prior. Vig would be a big factor in slightly polishing up Nirvana's sludgy sound. It could be argued that Butch himself was a big reason grunge broke through to the mainstream in 1991. In the same year as Nevermind, he would also produce the Smashing Pumpkins debut, Gish. Something in the Way was initially planned with the full band, but when they attempted it, Kurt hated the way it sounded. So to demonstrate to Butch how he wanted the song to be, he grabbed a 12-string guitar and laid down on his back to demonstrate the feel. Vig felt the electricity and hurried to record Kurt's sullen take as is. It would take all Vig's technical expertise to turn it into the final version heard on the album. Kurt's guitar was out of tune, which made matching Novoselic's bass and later Kirk Canning's cello line a real struggle. Chris and Dave also found syncing to the rhythm tricky, considering it moves as slow as molasses. But the sloth-like deliberation gives the song greater weight. The haunting cello line hangs over the funeral march. Cobain's main vocal, barely above a whisper and captured on the studio floor, sounds emotionally desperate as he fantasizes about living under a bridge as a vagrant. The chorus is simply the title. And with the solemn arrangement, it sounds like he's slowly losing his mind out in the elements. Something in the Way is a brooding acoustic stunner that's the closest Kurt ever got to realizing what he envisioned in his restless mind. Nevermind would become such a sensation that the band would later criticize the production as too slick and sanitized. The group seemed to partially blame that on Andy Wallace's final mix, because they would later cite Vig's initial mix of the album as the rawness they were looking for when they started working on their follow-up. On In Utero, Cobain sought to work with Steve Albini, as he was a huge fan of his productions on The Breeders' Pod and Surfer Rosa from the Pixies. Albini was, and remains, a staunch independent entity, openly critical of mainstream corporate industries. In order to commit, he advised the band to pay him directly, so the label could not interfere with sessions, and he also set a strict 2-week deadline for tracking. While most producers would receive a cut of the royalties, Albini considered it immoral and simply asked for a flat fee. With the original Nevermind mixes as a template, Albini did not hold back on the confrontational, abrasive production. From pounding drums to pulse-quickening low end and ear-shredding guitar, In Utero is a full frontal assault to the senses. For Heart-Shaped Box, the band perfected their quiet, loud, contrasting dynamics. On the verses, the bass line creeps along with a serpentine guitar line and muted drum knocks. The chorus positively explodes with a distorted low end, crushing toms, and a bending guitar line like a slaughterhouse squeal. Like the music, the lyrics exude this bipolar imbalance. He paints his lover as both his tormentor and his savior, and while it's easily read as referring to his tumultuous relationship with Courtney Love, it eerily parallels the heroin addiction that was slowly consuming him. Subtly melodic, gloriously unhinged, and intensely cathartic, Heart-Shaped Box is an emotional whirlwind of rock and roll. After moving to a major label, the band's recording budget swelled from the meager $600 to record Bleach to nearly $65,000 to complete Nevermind. Though even then, the album would be recorded at a breakneck speed in several weeks. Butch and the trio worked long 10-hour days to grind through the songs, with Chris and Dave's basic rhythm recorded quickly, but Kurt's guitar and vocal overdubs taking more time. Cobain was initially reluctant to record any secondary vocals at all, until Vig pointed out that John Lennon often double-tracked his voice. This occasionally worked. Other times, though, he would trick Kurt into redoing parts by claiming there had been technical issues. While it may have made him not so easy to creatively deal with, it was Cobain's straight-to-the-point punk mentality that made his music so engaging. You would never doubt that on every single take, he was giving it his all. Kurt would say he wrote In Bloom about his disdain for the jocks and posers who started showing up in the scene after the band gained some buzz. Growing up as a social pariah, he still fostered anger toward these macho jerks, and his resentment sees in the lyrics. On the verse, Chris plays a creeping bass line, along with Dave's primitive caveman stomp and Kurt's sharp guitar jabs slowly building. When the chorus breaks, Cobain hits his big muff fuzz pedal and blasts chunky power chords as he yells about bros who It's pointedly aimed at the tools who used to bully him, that were now down in the mosh pit. While the message went right over their heads, his furious fire was not lost on his fellow outcast. In Bloom is an empowering, righteous rallying call for the outsiders to push back against their oppressors, stand their ground, and let their voices be heard. Despite the initial shock and some wild conspiracy theories, it shouldn't have been surprising when Kurt took his life. He had a depressive, self-destructive streak that couldn't be cured by love or success. Cobain would be addicted to heroin before Nevermind, and his rejection of fame only led him further down the spiral. He would survive several overdoses, which only seemed to make him feel more invincible. After yet another OD though, a whole European tour was cancelled, with his family and friends pushing him into rehab. Unfortunately, you can't save those who don't want to be saved. He would break out of treatment and wind up dead a few days later. While it wasn't intentional, the last song on In Utero, All Apologies, would end up being the stingingly bittersweet goodbye to a tortured soul that sadly burns with unfulfilled promise. Kurt would dedicate All Apologies to his wife, Courtney Love, and their baby girl, Frances, saying the lyrics didn't really fit, but the song's peaceful, comforting mood was inspired by their light in his life. Cobain sings with a sedated calmness, playing a mesmerizing busy guitar line alongside Grohl's understated drum shuffle and Novoselic's loping bass line. The chorus blossoms into a lovely warped melody that is drenched in distorted guitar feedback. He yearns for warmth that seems so distant. Though his inner thoughts seem to dash his own optimism, as he rhymes married with buried. His mind seems to get more fragmented along with the arrangement. The instruments build in strength, as a humming static is introduced and he chants, a mantra meant to soothe his soul as he searches for a peace that he would sadly never find. Dripping with naked sincerity, All Apologies has an emotional intelligence that perfectly captures why Kurt Cobain spoke to a generation of overthinking introverts. The song's longing grunge folk, delicate melody, and unshakably earnest lyrics make an incredible and fitting swan song for Nirvana, and it's the band at their very best. And now, I'll add 2 more songs that almost made the list. Named after the drug to treat manic depression, the song is another with awesome, soft, but loud dynamics. The swings of momentum seem volatile. On the verses, the guitar slinks and the bass bubbles over a lighter rhythm that's peppy and upbeat. When the chorus comes crashing in, the wordless refrain, elbows are being thrown in the pit. The squall of guitar feedback is deafening, and the drums sound like the death of 1,000 drumsticks. Cobain said the song is about a man who turns to religion as a last resort, and it sounds like an unstable person on the edge. Lithium is a live wire pendulum that never fails to get me fired up. It just barely cracked the 10, but it's a stellar, high-energy jam. Sliver is a pummeling shot of punk adrenaline. The main riff is super simple DIY indie rock that any garage band could come up with, but the furious aggression clearly sets the group apart from the beginning. The song progressively crescendos with sloppy emotive drumming and vicious slicing guitar. By the end, Kurt's voice is blood-curdling as his vocal cords start breaking with how savagely he screams. Only 2 minutes long, it's over in a rush, but its tense, energetic blast is invigorating. No doubt inspiring many young artists to buy a guitar and a distortion pedal and drive their neighbors absolutely nuts. Sliver is a thrashing, killer rager, and it deserves to be mentioned among their best. Overrated hardly means it sucks, but did you know that on YouTube it's the band's third most popular song, by quite a margin? That just seems wacky. Though honestly, it's not too surprising. It always seems to get more radio time than even some of their biggest hits. I've never really understood why. It's a solid David Bowie deep cut. Personally, I like his original more. However, Kurt does a great rendition, lending a bit more soul. Along with his not-so-unplugged fuzzy riff, it's definitely an enjoyable version. I just don't really get how it would be played more than the other songs from the same MTV Unplugged sesh. If you haven't listened to the whole show in a while, well, you should. It's a treat for the ears. Adding Pat Smear as a second guitarist, the band seems so natural, turning down the volume, yet still delivering the tense potency and giving the songs an even more powerful depth. For The Man Who Sold the World, the lyrics make it seem like Kurt is detached, singing about someone else. In his best material, Cobain's lyrics were so personal that you empathized with his struggles even if they were caustic or crazed. Removed from the first-person narrative, a little spark is lost. It's no doubt the most pop-sounding song on the album. After all, it was written by the man who wrote Let's Dance. But to me, it's hardly my favorite track from the Unplugged show. Honestly, it's not even my favorite cover from the show. The ending number, his cover of the old Lead Belly standard, Where Did You Sleep Last Night, is full of fire. Back singing as the narrator, he nails a hoarse, heartbreaking take on a blues classic. It's a show-stopping performance. The Man Who Sold the World is a solid cover version of a catchy song with a great, memorable riff, but I find it hard to rate among Nirvana's all-time best. To me, it's a little overrated. A B-side on the Smells Like Teen Spirit single, and later released abroad when the band toured Japan and Australia on the Hormoning EP. This forgotten gem would come from the same session where Nirvana recorded Aneurysm the first time. On Even in His Youth, Kurt explores some childhood trauma of not being accepted by his father over a dirty, driving rhythm. His struggle for acceptance is captured in terse, biting words that feel voyeuristic, ripped from a teenage diary. The searing, toxic words ride the fierce, blunt rhythm, and it's so intensely visceral that you can't help but feel his pain. Cobain's barbed guitar riff is filthy, while Novoselic's bass riff stealthily prowls the low end, and Grohl's beat swings, even while pounding like heavy metal. The mix is so hot, it's like every instrument was recorded at maximum volume, pushing right into the red. If you haven't heard Even in His Youth in a while, you should definitely go add it to your playlist. So there you have it. That was undeniably the top 10 best Nirvana songs. So, how wrong was I? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's your list look like? Do you think The Man Who Sold the World is one of their best songs? Let me know. And if there's any song I missed, let me know in the comments below. Hope you stick around, and thank you for watching. Subtly mellow, inspired by the tempestuous, tempestuous. Okay. Engineer Craig okay. I don't know what that was. Engineer Craig Montgomery. Okay.
Shout out to Craig.
Shout out to Big Craig.